Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving into a really fascinating collection of sources you've shared. They all kind of circle around this concept that will shape so much of our lives, often without us even realizing it. Productivity.
It really does. And it seems like such a simple word, right? Productivity.
Hmm.
But as we, dig into these sources, we'll see just how complex it is,
Wow.
how its meaning has shifted over time.
Yeah, from the basic idea of what even counts as work.
Exactly. All the way to these surprising links with creativity and unfortunately with burnout too.
We've got a really interesting mix here, haven't we? Historical stuff, looking at how we started measuring work,
hmm And then reflections on creativity, how artists actually work.
plus research on well-being, the workplace side of things, and even some philosophical viewpoints on value.
Right. And our mission really in this deep dive is to try and connect those threads, understand the journey of this whole getting things done idea, maybe uncover some connections you wouldn't expect.
And see what practical insights, or even philosophical ones, these sources might hold for you listening today.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's start right at the beginning with the foundational ideas. Your sources point to Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. He drew this line.
Right. Between what he termed productive and unproductive labor. It's a key distinction for him.
And for Smith, productive meant what exactly?
Yeah.
Adding value to materials.
Precisely. Labor that added lasting value to physical stuff. Think manufacturing, taking raw goods, making them into something more valuable, something you could sell or accumulate.
It was productive.
Yes, because it resulted in a tangible good that contributed to wealth.
Okay, so what was unproductive then?
Yeah.
Like a servant.
Exactly. The labor of a personal servant, in his view, didn't add value to any material thing. Now, he wasn't saying their work wasn't valuable or didn't deserve pay. He's quite clear it has its value and deserves its reward.
Yeah.
But it didn't produce a concrete object that built wealth in the same way. His example was, a man could get rich employing manufacturers, but probably get poor employing lots of servants.
Interesting distinction, but then you have someone like Benjamin Franklin around the same time.
Yeah, a contemporary, but with a very different take, much more personal, almost moral.
His daily questions, right?
Right. Starting the day asking, what good shall be done this day?
And ending it evaluating what good has been done today.
It's less about material output, more about intentional value, positive impact.
A different kind of accounting.
Definitely.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. Technology enters the picture in a big way. Eli Whitney's cotton gin, 1793.
Oh, yeah. A massive milestone. That invention just exploded physical productivity for cotton processing.
How much? This source said something like 25 times.
Around that, yeah.
Yeah,
A 25-fold increase. Huge.
but there's a huge but here, isn't there?
Yeah. A massive dark but. It starkly shows the potential downside of focusing purely on output. Its adoption, especially in the U.S. South, was completely tied up with the horrific expansion and, frankly, the brutal intensification of slave labor.
So the machine made the forced labor more productive for the landowners.
Exponentially more. Built entirely on, immense human suffering. It's grim.
And that phrase, gin up, meaning to speed things up, that came from this.
Apparently so. Kind of a chilling linguistic echo of that history.
Wow. Okay, so moving into the 20th century, this efficiency idea gets formalized,
Yeah.
almost scientific.
You could say that. You see the rise of figures like Frederick Winslow Taylor,
Speedy Taylor.
the original stopwatch guy,
Yeah.
an engineer literally timing workers, figuring out the absolute fastest way to do tasks.
And then selling that knowledge back to companies.
Exactly. Charging for efficiency insights.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Like you said before, this wasn't just Taylor. It sparked a whole movement.
A huge movement. Early 20th century, the efficiency movement, often just called Taylorism,
And the goal was,
to find and eliminate waste everywhere, not just mechanical waste in factories.
oh, so broader than just assembly lines.
Much broader. Economic waste, social waste, even personal waste and habits. Homes, cities, government.
Right, this really took hold during the U.S. progressive era.
Absolutely. Huge faith in experts and scientific approaches led to growth in research universities, these efficiency bureaus popping up in cities.
Like Chicago and Massachusetts, the sources mentioned.
And reforms based on efficiency in hospitals, farming, manufacturing, you name it.
It even touched philanthropy. Rockefeller wanting to avoid wasting money.
Yep. And conservation, too. Though there were debates there. Roosevelt pushing for efficient use of resources.
Versus someone like John Muir, who was more about pure preservation.
Exactly. Different takes on what good meant for nature.
And this efficiency thinking reached national politics. Herbert Hoover.
Right. Hoover, an engineer himself, believed technical experts could solve big societal problems better than traditional politicians. Sort of the ultimate faith in rational management.
But even within the movement, there wasn't total agreement.
No, definitely not. You had figures like Louis Brandeis arguing against the idea that bigger automatically meant more efficient.
Challenging the notion that big business was inherently better than small business on efficiency grounds.
Right. So debates about scale were happening even then.
And specific systems came out of this, trying to quantify work, like the Beddoes system.
Yeah, that was an attempt to create a universal measure, the B unit, for all manual work. Trying to make it all comparable, measurable.
You can see echoes of this later, right? Like lean manufacturing.
Absolutely. That focus on eliminating any activity that doesn't add value for the customer, very much in the same vein. Eliminating waste.
And this wasn't just an American thing, was it?
Not at all. It went global. Britain had its national efficiency drive, spurred by competition, especially with Germany.
And Germany.
They had rationalization heavily influenced by American ideas like Ford's assembly lines, but using their own systems, like our IFE.
Even the Soviet Union got on board.
Surprisingly, yes. They embraced parts of scientific management. There was Alexei Gastev's Not movement.
Which saw the worker almost like a machine part.
Pretty much. A man-machine metaphor, all geared towards maximizing state output.
And Japan later, with quality control, Deming.
Right. W. Edwards Deming's ideas on quality and continuous improvement, which ironically didn't get much traction in the U.S. initially, were huge in post-war Japan and then eventually came back.
So this whole quest to optimize work, it's got a long, really complex, and truly global history.
Absolutely. Evolving from Smith's focus on material value to Taylor's measured motion to sophisticated process optimization.
Okay, so that's the historical drive for measurement, for optimization, the kind of external view. But your sources also dig into something else, something that feels almost opposite. Creativity.
It's a fascinating contrast, and interesting that even within something like Six Sigma, which is super process-focused, productivity is seen as maybe even more important than just revenues or profits.
Why is that?
Because it reflects both efficiency, doing things right, and effectiveness, doing the right things. It helps a business understand its real strengths and weaknesses beyond just the bottom line. It's a broader perspective.
Okay, that makes sense. And the relationship between creativity and efficiency. What do the sources say there?
They offer a really compelling sequence, actually. Creativity is positioned as the initiator.
The spark.
The spark, the idea generator, the solution driver, using imagination, coming up with something new.
And efficiency.
Efficiency is the driver of the process. It's the organization, the planning, the orderliness needed to take that creative spark and make it happen.
So creativity comes first.
That's the suggestion. It has to precede efficiency. You need the idea before you can figure out the most efficient way to execute it.
What stands out to you then? If creativity is the spark, how do these highly creative people actually approach the structured part, the doing?
That daily ritual source is gold for this. It looks at so many artists and writers.
And their habits are all over the place, right?
Completely diverse. Coffee, naps, short work bursts, long walks, eating the same meals every day, avoiding people, intense solitude.
Eccentric stuff too, like Beethoven and the water pouring, or Balzac's insane coffee intake.
Exactly. But beneath the diversity, the really powerful takeaway is the prevalence of routine, of ritual.
It's not about which routine, but having one.
Precisely. Having a constant program, as one source puts it, it's framed almost as a sign of ambition.
How so?
Well, it helps you tolerate the tough parts of creative works, the solitude, the frustration. You're not just waiting for inspiration to strike.
Right. You show up regardless of mood. Like that writer who said they write when they can't sleep, not just when they feel like it.
Yeah. And there's this intriguing idea that automating the mundane details of life through habit
frees up mental energy.
Exactly. Frees up the higher forces of the mind, making your nervous system your ally, not your enemy. The person without habits is called the poorest because they waste energy on constant decision-making.
Like Virginia Woolf's tracking her word count. That's a kind of personal efficiency system for creativity.
Totally. Or think of Olivia Butler absorbing ideas, reading, listening, and then writing like a fury when it hit. That's structuring energy.
Susan Sontag needing solitude like a spaceship.
Maria Sol Escobar relaxing at parties to recharge. Louisa May Alcott using a mood pillow to signal availability. They're all finding personal structures to enable that creative flow and output.
Okay, so routine helps manage the process. What about the motivation, the energy? You'd mentioned creative tension.
Ah, yes, another key concept from the sources, this idea of the gap.
The gap between where you are now and where you want to be, your vision.
Exactly, and that gap creates an energy, a tension.
And the sources say, don't avoid that tension. Use it.
Leverage it. It's framed as fuel for greater success at innovating new ideas and actually taking action.
But it requires getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Because facing that gap isn't always easy.
No, it's not. But according to Mark Hopkins, who cited, tapping into this is crucial. Define what you really want, write it down, create that tension.
And it pulls you forward.
Like a magnet pulling you towards that vision. He connects it directly to potential happiness, fulfillment, and prosperity. It reframes discomfort as a positive force.
So bringing ideas to life seems to need both that creative spark and the structure of routine, often powered by that tension.
That's a great summary of it, but there's a cost. When that drive for output, whether historical or creative, ignores the human element.
That's where burnout comes in.
Yeah, the Gallup study, it's stark. About 2/3 of full-time workers experience burnout on the job.
2/3? That's staggering.
And it breaks down. 23% say often or always, another 44% sometimes. It's clearly not some niche problem.
No, it's mainstream. And the costs are real, aren't they, for organizations? Absolutely. Burned out employees. 63% more likely to take a sick day. 2.6 times more likely to be actively looking for another job.
Huge impact on retention and just day-to-day presence.
Plus, 13% less confidence in their performance and only half as likely to discuss goals with their manager. It kills engagement.
And the personal toll.
Also immense. Burnout makes it twice as likely people struggle with family responsibilities and 23% more likely to end up in the emergency room. The stress just spills over.
Wow. But what's the key insight here? Is it just about working too hard?
Actually, no. The sources argue burnout has less to do with expectations for hard work and high performance and more to do with how someone is managed.
Ah, so it's often systemic, management-driven.
That's the argument. The study lists the top 5 factors linked to burnout, and they all point that way.
Okay, what are they?
Number 1, unfair treatment. Things like bias, favoritism, inconsistent policies, stuff that breaks trust.
Makes sense. What's 2?
Unmanageable workload. Feeling like you're drowning in mental quicksand, basically. And crucially, feeling like your manager isn't helping you prioritize or find resources.
Right. Lack of advocacy. 3rd.
Lack of role clarity. Wild statistic. Only 60% of workers actually know what's expected of them. Imagine the energy wasted just trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that's draining in itself. 4th.
Lack of communication and support from the manager. A good manager acts as a buffer, the sources say. If you feel supported, you're 70% less likely to experience high burnout. Feeling alone is a big factor.
Okay. And the 5th one?
Unreasonable time pressure. Constant, unrealistic deadlines. Employees who feel they do have enough time. Also 70% less likely to burn out.
So these are all things largely within management's control.
Exactly. Which leads to the conclusion that burnout is not inevitable. It's largely preventable if leadership and management styles change.
And ignoring it isn't just bad for morale, it hurts the business directly.
Right. Decision-making, customer service, quality control, innovation. It impacts everything.
So how do you prevent it? What do the sources suggest on an institutional level?
Big picture. Shifting from seeing people purely as resources to extract value from, towards investing in them.
More concrete steps.
Creating a genuinely supportive culture, offering flexibility. Things like 4 10-hour days are mentioned. Mentorship programs.
What about time off?
Crucial. Providing generous vacation. One source even suggests a minimum of 5 weeks and flexible sick leave. And ensuring fair, equitable pay.
Seems foundational. And on a personal level, what can individuals do?
Recognizing behaviors that drain energy. Focusing on managing your energy, not just your time. Actively prioritizing personal life, family.
Building support systems outside of work, too.
Definitely. Making sure your own responsibility lists are actually manageable. Identifying stressors and tackling them directly. Taking real vacations, meaning no work.
That's a hard one for many people.
Isn't it? Also, pursuing personal interests. Using workplace stress reducers if available. Pet therapy, music are mentioned. Stress reduction apps. And trying hard to minimize taking work home.
It's about actively replenishing, not just constantly expending energy.
Exactly. You need to recharge the human battery to sustain output.
Okay, so let's try and connect the dots here. We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have, from that deep history of measuring efficiency, Smith, Taylor,
To how creative people use routine and tension.
and then confronting this very real human cost of burnout when well-being gets ignored.
So let's loop back to Benjamin Franklin. Those simple questions. What good shall be done? And what was accomplished?
How do those land now after thinking about efficiency metrics, creative energy, and the risk of burnout?
It does make you think, doesn't it? If you only focus on what was accomplished in purely quantifiable terms, like maybe Taylorism pushed towards,
Do you risk missing the what good shall be done part, the meaning, the value beyond the numbers, the human impact?
there's that philosophical angle you brought up from Nietzsche, his critique of systems that create these abstract ideals divorced from lived reality.
Right, seeing that as potentially life-denying versus affirming life, empowering the individual.
So could an overemphasis on abstract productivity metrics, detached from the experience of the work or the human cost,
Become a kind of metaphysical fiction, as Nietzsche might put it, a number that looks real but misses the actual value or the toll it takes.
it's a powerful question. Because knowledge is great, but it's most valuable when you understand it and can apply it, right?
So for you listening, how can understanding this history, the creativity link, the necessity of tackling burnout, how can that help you navigate what productive really means in your own life and work?
It's about finding that balance, maybe.
We've definitely explored a wide range thanks to these sources, pin factories to personal rituals, efficiency movements to employee well-being.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. If productivity isn't just about doing more, faster,
And creativity isn't just random inspiration, but needs structure and energy.
and well-being is actually essential for both.
Then what does a truly productive and fulfilling day look like for you? How do you balance accomplishment with good, output with well-being?
Something for you to mull over, maybe explore on your own.
Thanks for tuning into The Introspective. We hope this episode gave you something to think about, or maybe even helped you feel a little less alone. We would love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you? What topics should we explore next? Drop us a comment, send a message, or just reflect quietly, whatever suits your style. And if you found this episode meaningful, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might need it. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep going inward. You have been listening to The Introspective.